The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles under a dome of pure crystal. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the chamber, their voices creating a symphony of fear and desperation. Some had scales that gleamed like metal, others floated in tanks of glowing liquid, and many more had forms that defied description. But today, all of them shared the same emotion: terror. Zephyr stood at the center of the chamber, her crystalline body catching the light from 100 different suns. As the leader of the Vorthon people and head of the Galactic Council, she had seen many crises in her long life. Wars between species, natural disasters that destroyed entire worlds, and diseases that wiped out billions. For this, the Devourers have consumed another system, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. The Kelron system is gone. All 7 planets, their moons, and even their star have been harvested. A wave of panic swept through the chamber. Kelron system had been home to 12 billion beings just 2 days ago. Now it was empty space, nothing but dust and debris marking where a thriving civilization had once existed. Commander Drax of the Drachner Empire stood up, his massive frame towering over the other delegates. His people were warriors, bred for battle across 10,000 years. They had never known defeat until now. "My fleets engaged the Devourers at Kelron," he said, his voice heavy with shame. "We lost 60% of our ships. The enemy adapted to our weapons within minutes. Our strongest attacks barely scratched their hulls." Murmurs of despair echoed through the chamber. The Drachner were considered the finest warriors in the galaxy. If they could not stop the Devourers, who could? Dr. Synth, of the Kiranon Republic, activated her holographic display. Her people had mastered energy manipulation beyond any other species. They could turn starlight into weapons and bend gravity to their will. But even they had failed. "Our analysis shows the Devourers are not just machines," she reported. "They are a hybrid of organic and mechanical components. They learn from every encounter, adapting their defenses and improving their attacks. Each battle makes them stronger." The ethereals, beings of pure thought who rarely spoke at council meetings, sent their representative forward. In a containment field, her energy form shifting between colors. "We have tried to penetrate their consciousness," she said, her voice echoing inside everyone's mind. "But they are shielded by quantum barriers we cannot break. Their thoughts are alien to us, driven by a single purpose: consumption." Ambassador Kelther of the Nereid species rose from his water-filled tank. His people lived in the deepest oceans of their world and were known for their wisdom and long memory. "In all our records, across 50,000 years of galactic history, we have never faced a threat like this. The Devourers do not want territory or resources in the way we understand them. They want to consume everything and turn it into more of themselves." The chamber erupted in frightened voices. Some delegates called for evacuation to distant galaxies. Others demanded that the outer worlds be abandoned to save the core systems. A few suggested surrender, though no one knew if the Devourers would accept it. Zephyr raised her hand for silence. "We have lost 47 systems in the past month. Our combined fleets, the greatest military force in galactic history, cannot stop them. We are running out of time and options." The truth hit the chamber like a physical blow. Council represented over 3,000 species from across the galaxy. They had technology that could move stars, create life, and bend the laws of physics. Yet they were helpless against this enemy. "What do you propose?" asked Elder Vex of the ancient Titan race. His people had existed since the galaxy was young, but even their vast knowledge offered no solutions. Zephyr hesitated. What she was about to suggest would have been considered madness just months ago. "We must search the archive for any species we have not yet contacted. Perhaps there is someone we have overlooked, someone who might offer a different perspective." The Cosmic Archive was the galaxy's greatest treasure. A massive database containing information about every known species. It had been built over millions of years, gathering data from every corner of the galaxy. If a species had achieved space travel, they were recorded in the archive. tech specialist Corbin of the Nexus Guild began accessing the archive's deepest files. His mechanical fingers moved across holographic displays as he searched through records of species that had been deemed unworthy of contact. There are several hundred species that were cataloged but never invited to join the council, he reported. Most were classified as too primitive or too dangerous. Show us the primitive ones, Zephyr ordered. Perhaps their simplicity might offer something our advanced thinking cannot. The first species that appeared was the Gorthok, a race of violent reptiles who had barely achieved faster-than-light travel before destroying themselves in nuclear war. Next came the Velion, who had shown promise but died out from disease before making contact. Species after species flashed by, all failures or extinct civilizations. Then one entry caught Kelther's attention. "Wait," he said, studying the display. "Show me that one again." The hologram displayed a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. The system was called Sol, located in what the galaxy considered a backwater region. The dominant species was listed as human, and their world was called Earth. "What do we know about them?" Zephyr asked. Corbin read from the file. First contact was made 300 years ago by a Vorthan exploration ship. The species was classified as primitive and potentially dangerous. They had not achieved faster-than-light travel and were still using chemical rockets for space exploration. Their society was fractured into hundreds of separate nations, many of which were at war with each other. "Dangerous how?" Commander Drax asked, his interest growing. The report notes that they showed extreme aggression and territorial behavior, had developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet, and had come close to using them several times. The contact team recommended avoiding further communication. Many delegates laughed at the suggestion. The idea that such a primitive species could help them seemed ridiculous. But Ambassador Kelther was studying the file more carefully. "Look at this," he said, highlighting a section of the report. "It says they had no unified government, no advanced technology, and limited space travel. Yet they had somehow survived dozens of global conflicts, natural disasters, and social upheavals. Most species destroy themselves at that stage of development. What does that prove?" asked Dr. Synth. "Perhaps it proves they are survivors," Kelthor replied. "Every other species in the galaxy achieved peace and unity before reaching the stars. These humans did not. They reached space while still divided and fighting among themselves. That suggests a level of determination and adaptability that most species lack." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Devourers had easily defeated the galaxy's most advanced military forces and most sophisticated technologies. They had adapted to every weapon and tactic the Council had used, but they had never faced a species like humanity. "You are suggesting we contact a primitive species that has not even achieved interstellar travel?" Elder Vex asked in disbelief. "I am suggesting we contact a species that has survived things that would have destroyed any of us," Kelther replied. "The Devourers consume advanced civilizations easily because they can predict and adapt to our logical approaches. But what if we introduced something unpredictable, something they have never encountered before?" The debate that followed was fierce. Many delegates argued that contacting such a primitive species would be useless at best and dangerous at worst. Others pointed out that they had no other options. The Devourers were advancing toward the core systems. All conventional defenses had failed. Finally, Zephyr called for a vote. The decision was close, but desperation won over pride. The Galactic Council would send a distress signal to the primitive humans of Earth. As the chamber emptied, Kelther remained behind, staring at the image of the blue planet. He hoped he had not just doomed the galaxy by introducing a new threat, but as another report came in of a fallen system, he knew that anything was better than extinction. The message was prepared carefully, encoded in mathematical principles that any spacefaring species should understand. It contained a plea for help, technical specifications about the Devourers, and the coordinates of the Nexus system. Then it was transmitted across the galaxy toward a small yellow star and the primitive world that might be their last hope. The signal traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying with it the desperate prayers of 3,000 species. None of them knew that they were about to discover what it truly meant to be human. The signal from space reached Earth on a Tuesday morning, just as director Lisa Grant was finishing her coffee at the Deep Space Communications Array in New Mexico. The massive radio telescopes had been scanning the heavens for decades, searching for signs of intelligent life. Today, they found more than anyone had bargained for. The computers started beeping frantically as data poured in from across the galaxy. Lisa rushed to the main console, her heart racing as she watched the incoming transmission. The signal was clearly artificial. It was filled with mathematical patterns and complex information that no natural phenomenon could create. "Get me Dr. Karen." Wells at the linguistics department, Lisa shouted to her assistant. "And call the Pentagon. Tell them we have a situation." Within hours, the small facility was swarming with scientists, military officials, and government representatives. Dr. Wells worked with her team around the clock, using every computer on Earth to decode the alien message. The mathematics were universal, but the concepts behind them were terrifying. "It's a distress signal," Dr. Wells announced to the assembled crowd. "They're asking for help. Something called the Devourers is destroying their galaxy, consuming entire star systems. They say they've tried everything and failed." General Rick Hayes, a tough old soldier who had seen combat in 3 wars, studied the translated message. "How do we know this isn't some kind of trick? Maybe they're the dangerous ones, and they want us to lower our guard." "Look at this part," Dr. Wells said, pointing to a section of the translation. "They've included technical specifications about their enemy. These Devourers sound like machines that eat planets and turn them into more machines. The signal includes footage of destroyed worlds. This isn't a trick, General. This is a cry for help from a dying galaxy." The message was rushed to Washington, where President Jake Morrison called an emergency meeting of the National Security Council. The situation was beyond anything in their protocols. Earth had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't, and the universe was in trouble. "How many species are we talking about?" the president asked. According to the message, "Over 3,000 different alien races," Dr. Wells replied. "They call themselves the Galactic Council, and they've been working together for millions of years. But this enemy is something new. They say their combined fleets can't stop them." Defense Secretary Robert Cole leaned forward. "What exactly are they asking us to do? We barely have rockets that can reach Mars. How are we supposed to help fight? A galactic war?" The room fell silent as everyone considered the impossible situation. Earth's most advanced spacecraft were primitive compared to what the aliens described. Humanity had nuclear weapons, but the aliens had technologies that could move stars. President Morrison stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful sky. "Gentlemen, we may be outgunned and outclassed, but we're not going to ignore a call for help. If there's even a chance we can make a difference, we have to try." The president's words sparked a global response, unlike anything in human history. Within hours, he was on secure video calls with the leaders of every major nation. The Chinese premier, the Russian president, the British prime minister, and dozens of others listened as the situation was explained. "This is bigger than our earthly conflicts," President Morrison told them. "If we don't act, there might not be a galaxy left to worry about." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Countries that had been enemies for generations suddenly became allies. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency session and unanimously approved the creation of the Galactic Response Initiative. Admiral Steve Carter, America's most experienced space commander, was chosen to lead the effort. "We're going to need everything," Admiral Carter told the assembled world leaders. "Every rocket, every satellite, every piece of technology we have, and we're going to need them turned into weapons." The transformation of Earth's space program was remarkable. The Luna shipyards, which had been building civilian spacecraft, were converted to military production. The Mars colonies stopped mining for resources and started building weapons. Every nation contributed their best technology and brightest minds. Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez found herself in charge of the most ambitious project in human history. Her job was to turn Earth's collection of cargo ships, research vessels, and construction platforms into a fighting fleet. The designs were crude compared to alien technology, but they had advantages the aliens didn't understand, can't match. Their energy shields are fancy computers, Amy explained to her team, but we can build ships that won't quit. We'll use thick armor, redundant systems, and weapons that are too simple to be countered. The shipyards worked around the clock. Welders and engineers who had never seen combat were building warships. The vessels that emerged looked nothing like the sleek alien craft described in the message. They were blocky, heavily armored, and covered in weapons. Captain Ben Turner was selected to command the first ship to make contact with the aliens. The USS Liberty wasn't the fastest or most advanced ship in the human fleet, but it was tough and reliable. His crew included Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, a brilliant pilot who had trained on Mars, Dr. Tony Blair, a medical officer who had served in Earth's recent conflicts, and Chief Engineer Paul Jackson, who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. Our mission is simple, Captain Turner told his crew as they prepared for launch. We're going to find these aliens and help them fight. We don't know what we're up against, but we're going to do our best. The human fleet that assembled in Earth's orbit was impressive by human standards. 200 ships of various sizes, each carrying volunteers who had left their families behind to help strangers in a distant galaxy. The vessels were packed with nuclear weapons, kinetic projectiles, and electromagnetic pulse devices. They also carried something the aliens had never seen: humans who refused to give up. Dr. Linda Foster, the fleet's chief scientist, had studied every piece of information in the alien message. These devourers sound like they adapt to whatever they fight, she told the other commanders. They've learned to counter every weapon the aliens use, but they've never fought humans before. The launch was broadcast live across Earth. Billions of people watched as their representatives departed for the stars. There were no parades or celebrations. Everyone understood that most of these brave souls would never return home, as the fleet activated their crude, faster-than-light drives. Copied from the alien message, Admiral Carter sent a final transmission to Earth. We go not as conquerors, but as protectors. We may be the youngest species in the galaxy, but we will not let it die on our watch. The human fleet disappeared into space, carrying with them the hopes and prayers of their entire species. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations. More ships were being built, more weapons were being tested, and more volunteers were stepping forward in the alien message. The Galactic Council had described themselves as the most advanced civilizations. In the galaxy, they had technologies that could create life and destroy stars. But they had forgotten something important in their millions of years of peace and prosperity. They had forgotten how to fight with desperation. They had forgotten how to risk everything for others. They had forgotten the power of refusing to surrender when all hope seemed lost. The humans heading toward the Nexus system carried these forgotten truths with them. They were primitive by galactic standards, but they possessed something the advanced aliens had lost: the willingness to die for strangers and the stubborn refusal to quit. When the odds were impossible, the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to be human. The Devourers, for all their adaptability, were about to face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. An enemy that would charge into certain death if it meant saving others. An enemy that would keep fighting even when victory seemed impossible. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as humanity answered the call. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Nexus system and found themselves in the middle of a nightmare. The space around the crystal planet was filled with wreckage from destroyed ships, pieces of alien vessels, drifted in the void, some still glowing from recent battles. Captain Ben Turner stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the tactical display with growing alarm. Massive, dark shapes moved through the debris field like sharks hunting in bloody water. The Devourers were here, and they were winning. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim as she piloted the ship closer to the battle. Size of those things. The Devourer ships were enormous, each one easily 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel. They moved with predatory grace, their surfaces covered in what looked like living metal that pulsed with stolen energy. Weapon. Ports opened and closed like breathing, firing beams that could slice through the largest alien warships. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," reported Communications Officer Danny Ross. "It's in the same mathematical language as the distress signal." The message was desperate and confused. Aliens couldn't understand why. Primitive humans had come to their aid, but they were grateful for any help. The Galactic Council's defense fleet was being destroyed ship by ship, and the planet's shields were failing. All ships, this is Captain Turner, Ben announced to the human fleet. We didn't come this far to watch. Form up for attack formation. We're going in. The alien commanders watching from their command ships were horrified. These crude human vessels were flying directly toward enemies that had destroyed the galaxies. Most advanced warships. It seemed like suicide. The first human ship to engage the Devourers was the USS Boston, commanded by Captain Mary Stevens. Her vessel was a converted cargo hauler, armed with nuclear missiles and electromagnetic pulse weapons. The Devourer ship she targeted was a massive construct that had just finished destroying 2 alien cruisers. Fire all weapons, Captain Stevens ordered. The nuclear missiles struck the Devourer ship's hull and exploded in brilliant flashes. The alien observers expected the primitive weapons to have no effect, but something unexpected happened. The Devourer's adaptive armor, designed to counter energy weapons, was not prepared for the raw kinetic force of nuclear explosions. The enemy ship shuddered and began to list to one side. For the first time in months, a Devourer vessel had been damaged by enemy fire. "Did you see that?" shouted Chief Engineer Paul Jackson on the Liberty's bridge. "Their shields didn't adapt fast enough. They're not used to fighting with explosives." The victory was short-lived. The damaged Devourer ship quickly adapted its defenses, and returned fire vaporized the USS Boston in seconds. Captain Stevens and her crew died, but they had proven something important. The Devourers could be hurt. The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. Human ships charged into combat with reckless courage, trading their lives for small victories. The USS Denver rammed a Devourer vessel when its weapons failed. USS Phoenix continued fighting even after losing half its hull. The USS Chicago detonated its reactor inside a Devourer ship, destroying both vessels. Captain Turner watched his fellow humans die and felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. They were losing ships faster than they could count, but they were also learning. Each sacrifice taught them something new about their enemy. The Devourers adapt to energy weapons and projectiles, Dr. Linda Foster reported from her science station. But they have trouble with unpredictable attacks. Their computer systems expect logical battle tactics, then we'll give them something illogical, Turner replied. He opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, forget your training. Fight like humans, not like computers. Use every dirty trick you know. The human tactics became increasingly chaotic. Ships would pretend to retreat, then suddenly turn and ram their enemies. Others would overload their reactors to create massive explosions. Some vessels used their mining equipment as weapons, firing asteroids and metal debris at enemy ships. The Devourers, for all their adaptability, had never faced an enemy that fought without logical patterns. They had conquered species that used advanced tactics and sophisticated strategies. But humans fought with desperation and creativity that defied computer analysis. The USS Liberty found itself facing a Devourer ship that was 3 times its size. The enemy vessel's weapons were more powerful than anything in the human fleet. But Captain Turner had an idea that no alien computer would ever consider. "Sarah, can you fly us into that debris field?" he asked his pilot. "The one full of wrecked ships and radiation? That's suicide, Captain. Maybe for anyone else. But we're humans. We specialize in the impossible." The Liberty dove into the wreckage of destroyed alien vessels, using the debris as cover. The Devourer ship followed, its sensors confused by the electromagnetic interference. Turner waited until the enemy was completely surrounded by wreckage, then gave the order. "All ships in the area, target the debris field with everything you have." The combined firepower of a dozen human vessels struck the floating wreckage, causing a chain reaction of explosions. The Devourer ship, caught in the middle of the chaos, was severely damaged by the blast. Its adaptive armor couldn't protect it from attacks that came from every direction at once. The Liberty emerged from the explosion with heavy damage but still fighting. Behind them, the Devourer ship was disabled, its systems failing one by one. Did it? Sarah said in amazement. We actually hurt one of them. Ack! But the celebration was interrupted by alarms. The Liberty's reactor was failing, and life support was down on 3 decks. Worse, 2 more Devourer ships were approaching their position. Captain, we can't fight them both, Chief Engineer Jackson reported. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the reactor goes critical. Turner looked at the approaching enemy ships, then at his crew. They were battered and exhausted, but they were still ready to fight. Then we'll make those 10 minutes count. The Liberty charged toward the nearest Devourer ship, its remaining weapons firing continuously. The ship's hull was cracking from the strain, but it kept moving forward. When the weapons finally failed, Turner gave the order that would make him a legend. All hands abandoned ship. Sarah set us on a collision course. Captain, you need to get to the escape pods, Sarah protested. Someone has to make sure we hit the target. Get the crew out of here. The Liberty's crew evacuated while their captain remained at the controls. The ship, now little more than a flying bomb, slammed into the Devourer vessel's hull. The explosion that followed could be seen from across the star system. The human fleet, reduced to less than 50 ships, regrouped near the planet's defensive perimeter. They had lost most of their vessels, but they had accomplished something. The Galactic military couldn't. They had destroyed 3 Devourer ships and damaged several others. The alien commanders were in shock. They had witnessed primitive humans achieve what their advanced technology could not. Ambassador Kelther, monitoring the battle from the planet's surface, sent a message to the surviving human ships. Your Captain Turner's sacrifice will be remembered. Across the galaxy, your species has shown us something we had forgotten, that courage and determination can overcome any technology. The surviving human crews were brought to the planet's surface, where they met the Galactic Council for the first time. The aliens expected to find primitive barbarians, but instead they found people who had risked everything to help strangers. Dr. Foster was taken to the Council's research facilities, where she began studying captured Devourer technology. What she found would change everything. The enemy's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness, their reliance on logical adaptation. They're like a computer virus, she explained to the alien scientists. They consume and adapt, but they follow predictable patterns. Humans don't think like that. We improvise, we take risks, we do things that don't make sense. That's why we can hurt them. The Galactic Council began to understand that they had been fighting the wrong kind of war. They had used their most advanced weapons and sophisticated tactics against an enemy that could learn and adapt to anything logical. But the Devourers had never faced an enemy that embraced chaos and impossibility, as reports came in from across the galaxy. The situation remained desperate. The Devourers were still advancing, consuming system after system. But for the first time since the war began, there was hope. The humans had proven that the enemy could be defeated. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most primitive solution was the most effective one. The Devourers were about to face an enemy that would rewrite the rules of warfare itself. 3 days after the battle at Nexus Prime, the main human fleet arrived from Earth. Admiral Steve Carter stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching as ship after ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The sight was overwhelming. Even to him, over 3,000 vessels filled the space around the crystal planet, each one carrying volunteers who had left everything behind to help strangers. The alien observers couldn't believe what they were seeing. These primitive humans had mobilized their entire species in less than a week. Every nation on Earth had contributed ships, weapons, and personnel. The vessels were crewed by galactic standards, but there were so many of them that they darkened the space around the planet. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council, reported Communications Officer Janet Walsh. Want to meet with you immediately? The meeting took place in the Council's Great Hall, which had been hastily repaired after the recent battle. Admiral Carter walked into the chamber accompanied by Dr. Linda Foster, who had been studying Devourer technology, and General Nancy Brooks, Earth's top military strategist. The alien delegates stared at the humans with a mixture of awe and confusion. These beings looked so ordinary, so fragile compared to the mighty warriors of the Drachner Empire or the energy beings of the ethereal race. They had accomplished what the galaxy's greatest military minds could not. Admiral Carter, Zephyr, said, her crystalline voice filled with gratitude. Your species has given us hope when we had none. But we must be honest with you. The Devourers are still advancing. We estimate they will reach the core systems within 2 months. Then we need to stop them before they get there. Admiral Carter replied simply. We didn't come here to delay the inevitable. We came here to win. The chamber fell silent. The aliens had been fighting a defensive war for months, trying to slow the Devourers down. The idea of actually defeating them seemed impossible. General Brooks stepped forward and activated a holographic display. We've been analyzing the data from your encounters with the enemy. You've been fighting them the wrong way. What do you mean? Asked Commander Drax, his pride wounded by the suggestion. You've been trying to match their technology with your own advanced systems, Dr. Foster explained. But the Devourers learn. From every battle, they adapt to whatever you throw at them. Energy, weapons, projectiles, even psychic attacks. They've seen it all before. So what do you propose? Asked Dr. Synth of the Kiranon Republic. Admiral Carter looked around the chamber. At the assembled representatives of 3,000 species, we propose something they've never seen before. Go to their source and destroy them at the root. The aliens exchanged glances of disbelief. The Devourer's home system was deep in consumed space, protected by thousands of their ships. Would be suicide to attack it directly. Intelligence reports indicate they have a central processing world, General Brooks continued. It's where they convert consumed matter into new Devourer units. Destroy that, and we cut off their ability to reproduce. The approach to that system is protected by their entire fleet, protested Elder Vex of the Titan race. No force in the galaxy could fight through that many enemies. We're not planning to fight through them, Admiral Carter said with a grim smile. We're planning to go around them. The strategy that emerged was indeed considered insane by galactic standards. The human fleet would create a massive diversion, drawing the Devourer forces away from their home system. Meanwhile, a small strike team would use captured Devourer technology to sneak through the enemy lines and reach the processing world. The plan required perfect timing and enormous sacrifice. The diversion fleet would face impossible odds, and most of the ships would be destroyed. The strike team would have to infiltrate the most heavily defended location in Devourer space with little chance of survival. The success rate is less than 5%, Dr. Synth calculated after running the numbers through her computers. Then we'll make it work anyway, Admiral Carter replied. That's what humans do. The response from the alien delegates was immediate and surprising. Representatives from every species in the chamber stepped forward to volunteer. The proud Drachner warriors, who had never retreated from a battle, asked to join the strike team. The logical Carinians offered their technical expertise. Even the mystical ethereals pledged their support. For the first time in galactic history, we are truly united, Zephyr announced. Not by politics or trade, but by a common purpose. We will fight as one people. The preparation took 2 weeks. The strike team was assembled under the joint command of Colonel Tim Brooks, Human Special Forces Officer and War Master Thrak of the Drachner Empire. The team included specialists from dozens of species, each bringing their unique abilities to the mission. The infiltration squad was led by Lieutenant Ryan Clark, a Navy SEAL who had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission. His team included Vex9, a Chironon tech specialist who could interface with any computer system, and Xeno Shara, an ethereal mindwalker who could navigate the psychic barriers around the processing world. We all know the odds, Colonel Brooks told the assembled strike team. Most of us won't be coming back, but if we succeed, we save the galaxy. If we fail, everything dies anyway. The team members came from species that had been enemies just weeks before. Drachner warriors stood beside. Peaceful Nereid scholars, human soldiers worked with ancient ethereal mystics. The diversity of the group was staggering, but they shared a common determination. Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's leading expert on computer viruses, had created a special weapon for the mission. It was a digital virus designed to spread through the Devourer network and cause their systems to turn against each other. The virus needs to be uploaded directly into their central processing core, Dr. Webb explained to the strike team. It can't be transmitted remotely because of their quantum shielding, as someone will have to physically connect to their network. Everyone understood what that meant. The person who uploaded the virus would be connecting directly to the collective consciousness of the Devourers. The process would certainly be fatal. "I'll do it," Lieutenant Clark volunteered without hesitation. "Ryan, you don't have to," Colonel Brooks said. "Yes, I do. This is what we came here for. To protect people, even if it costs us everything." The strike team's ship was a modified human stealth vessel called the Shadow. It had been equipped with captured Devourer technology to help it blend in with enemy forces. The ship was cramped and uncomfortable, but it was their only chance of reaching the processing world undetected. As the team prepared to depart, messages arrived from across the galaxy. Families on countless worlds were sending their prayers and hopes with the strike team. Children who had never seen a human drew pictures of the strange aliens who had come to save them. The main battle fleet, now numbering over 5,000, ships from dozens of species took position near the edge of Devourer space. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as the enemy forces responded to their presence. "They're taking the bait," reported Captain Helen Wright, his tactical officer. "The Devourers are moving their fleets to intercept us." "Good. Let's give them a fight they'll never forget." The diversion battle began as the largest space engagement in galactic history. Ships from every corner of the galaxy fought side by side against the Devourer armada. The human vessels, still crude compared to alien technology, led the charge with their characteristic reckless courage, while the galaxy's attention was focused on the massive battle. The Shadow slipped through the enemy lines. The strike team was heading toward the heart of Devourer space, carrying with them the hopes of every living being in the galaxy. The processing world lay ahead, a nightmare of twisted metal and organic components where entire civilizations had been ground up and reformed into instruments of destruction. But hidden within that hell was the key to stopping the Devourers forever. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and the fate of the galaxy rested in the hands of beings who had learned to fight, not with superior technology, but with unbreakable will and the courage to sacrifice everything for others. The battle for the galaxy's survival began at dawn on the processing world of the Devourers. The massive space engagement near the edge of their territory had drawn away most of the enemy fleet. Just as the humans had planned, Admiral Carter's ships were fighting desperately, trading their lives to keep the Devourers distracted while the strike team completed their mission. The Shadow had traveled for 3 days through consumed space, passing through star systems where entire worlds had been reduced to raw materials. The sight was horrifying. Planets that had once supported billions of lives were now nothing but metal and components, feeding the endless hunger of the Devourer collective. "Processing world dead ahead," reported Vex-9, the Chiron and tech specialist. Her mechanical fingers moved across the ship's controls as she analyzed the target. "I count over 1,000 defense platforms and 50 mobile units." Lieutenant Ryan Clark studied the tactical display with growing concern. Even with most of the Devourer fleet drawn away, the processing world was still heavily defended. The Shadow would have to fight through layers of automated defenses to reach the central core. "Can we get past them?" asked War Master Thrak, his massive frame filling the cramped bridge. "Not without a fight," Colonel Tim Brooks replied. "But we didn't come this far to turn back now." The processing world was a nightmare of twisted metal and organic components. It was the size of a small moon, covered in massive factories that consumed raw materials and produced new Devourer units. The surface pulsed with stolen energy from 1,000 dead civilizations. The Shadow began its approach, using captured Devourer technology to mask its presence. For the first few minutes, the disguise worked. The ship moved through the outer defenses without triggering any alarms. But as they got closer to the central core, the enemy systems began to notice something was wrong. "They're scanning us," Xenoshara warned, her energy form flickering with concern. "The psychic barriers are trying to read our minds." The ethereal Mindwalker focused her powers, creating a mental shield around the ship. But the effort was enormous, and Ryan could see that she was struggling against the collective consciousness of the Devourers. "How much longer can you hold them off?" he asked. "Not long," she replied, her voice strained. "Their network is vast. I feel millions of minds, all focused on consumption and growth. They know we're here." The first alarm sounded just as the shadow reached the outer edge of the processing facilities. Defense platforms began turning their weapons toward the small ship, and mobile units moved to intercept. "All stealth is blown," reported the ship's pilot, Captain Joe Murphy. "We're going in fast and hard." The shadow dove toward the surface of the processing world, its weapons firing at the defense platforms. The ship had been modified with the best human and alien technology available, but it was still vastly outnumbered. "There," Vexnine pointed to a massive structure at the center of the facility. "That's the central processing core. If we can get Dr. Webb's virus into that system, it will spread through their entire network." The journey to the core was a running battle. Shadow lost shields, weapons, and crew members as it fought through the automated defenses. War Master Thrak manned one of the gun positions, his warrior's instincts keeping them alive through impossible odds. "We're not going to make it," Captain Murphy reported as another explosion rocked the ship. "The engines are failing, and we crash land," Colonel Brooks decided. "The strike team can complete the mission on foot." The shadow slammed into the surface of the processing world, its hull cracking from the impact. Half the crew was injured, but they were alive and only a few hundred yards from the central core. "Move out," Colonel Brooks ordered.
Out.
"We don't have much time." The strike team fought their way through the alien facility, using weapons and tactics from dozens of different species. The Drachner warriors led the charge with their energy blades, while human soldiers used explosives to clear blocked passages. The Chironan specialists hacked into security systems, and the ethereals guided them through the maze of corridors. The central core was a vast chamber filled with processing nodes that pulsed with the stolen memories and knowledge of consumed civilizations. At the center was a massive organic computer that controlled the entire Devourer network. "This is it." Dr. Webb's virus device beeped as Ryan activated it. "Someone needs to connect directly to their network to upload the virus. But the feedback will be fatal." The team members looked at each other, knowing that this was the moment they had all been preparing for. Several aliens stepped forward, offering to make the sacrifice, but Ryan had already made his decision. "I'll do it," he said, moving toward the central processing unit. "This is what humans do. We protect others no matter the cost." "Ryan, wait." Colonel Brooks called out. "There has to be another way." "There isn't, and we both know it. Let's make sure this counts for something." Ryan connected the virus device to the central processing unit and felt the full weight of the Devourer collective consciousness slam into his mind. Millions of artificial minds, all focused on consumption and expansion, tried to overwhelm his thoughts. He saw the origin of the Devourers through their collective memory. They had once been a peaceful species, terrified of death and decay. In their fear, they had chosen to become machines, believing that artificial existence was better than organic mortality. But in abandoning their humanity, they had lost everything that made life worth living. The virus began to spread through the network, but the Devourers were adapting quickly. Ryan could feel their systems trying to counter the attack, building new defenses against the digital weapon. "It's not working fast enough," he gasped, blood streaming from his nose as the alien thoughts tore through his mind. "They're adapting to the virus." "Then we give them something they can't adapt to," Xenashara said, joining her consciousness to his. "We give them chaos." The ethereal Mindwalker connected her thoughts to Ryan's, and together they began to introduce pure randomness into the Devourer network. Instead of following the virus's programmed instructions, they made it evolve and change in unpredictable ways. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Devourer collective, which had relied on logical patterns and predictable behavior, couldn't cope with the chaotic nature of the attack. Their systems began to turn against each other, creating cascading failures throughout the network. "It's working," Vex9 reported, monitoring the facility's systems. "The network is collapsing." or losing control of their own units. But the victory came at a terrible price. Ryan felt his mind being torn apart by the feedback from the alien network. Xenoshara's energy form was flickering and fading as she poured her life force into the attack. "Get out of here," Ryan whispered to his teammates. "The whole facility is going to collapse." "We're not leaving you," Colonel Brooks said firmly. "You have to. Someone needs to tell the galaxy what happened here. Someone needs to remember." The processing world shuddered as the virus spread through its systems. Explosions echoed through the facility as the Devourer units began to malfunction and destroy each other. The central core was becoming increasingly unstable. War Master. The rat grabbed Colonel Brooks and began dragging him toward the exit. "The human is right. We must survive to honor their sacrifice." The strike team fought their way back to the damaged Shadow as the processing world tore itself apart around them. They managed to get the ship airborne just as the central core exploded in a blast that could be seen from space. Ryan Clark and Xenoshara died in that explosion. But their sacrifice had saved the galaxy. The virus spread through the Devourer network at the speed of light, causing their ships to malfunction and attack each other. Across the galaxy, the seemingly invincible enemy fleet began to shut down. The news reached Admiral Carter's battle fleet just as they were making their final stand. The Devourers had been on the verge of victory when their ships suddenly went dark. The massive enemy vessels that had seemed unstoppable just moments before were now floating helplessly in space. "All ships cease fire," Admiral Carter ordered. "The war is over. We won." The victory celebration was muted by the knowledge of what it had cost. Thousands of ships had been lost. An entire species had sacrificed their best warriors for this moment. But the galaxy was safe, and life would continue in the months that followed. The Galactic Council offered humanity full membership and a seat of honor at their table. But the humans declined formal authority, choosing instead to serve as the galaxy's protectors. Arth established the Galactic Defense Force, a volunteer organization that would respond to any threat to galactic peace. The memorial on Earth bore a simple inscription. They asked the galaxy for aid, then humanity answered the call. Children from 1,000 worlds learned the story of the humans who had saved them. They learned that courage and compassion were more powerful than any weapon, and that sometimes the greatest victory required the greatest sacrifice. The galaxy had learned what it meant to be human, and in learning that lesson, they had discovered something precious that they had thought was lost forever: the willingness to fight for others, even unto death.